You ever notice how two people can make almost the exact same amount of money and somehow end up living completely different financial lives? Like, maybe you've seen this at work. Two coworkers, same job title, same paycheck every 2 weeks, same office coffee that tastes, honestly, a little suspicious. Yet somehow one of them always seems calm about money. They talk about investments sometimes. Maybe they're planning a vacation. Maybe they casually mention they're saving for a house. And the other person? They're constantly stressed. It's always something. Credit card bill this month. Car repair. Next month. Rent creeping up. Something unexpected that wipes out whatever tiny bit of progress they were hoping to make. And if you've ever been in that second situation, staring at your bank app late at night, you know that feeling. That quiet, slightly uncomfortable thought that creeps in. How do some people seem to move forward, while others just stay stuck? Because the weird part is, it's not always about income. Sometimes the difference isn't thousands of dollars more per year. Sometimes the difference is habits, small ones, daily ones, the kind that seem almost invisible when you look at them individually. Now, my name is Nick, and I spend a slightly ridiculous amount of time thinking about money. Not just numbers, but the psychology behind it. Why two people can face almost identical financial situations and somehow end up on completely different paths. And honestly, the deeper you look into this, the more you realize something kind of surprising. Wealth isn't just built by big decisions. It's built by the tiny things people do every single day without even thinking about it. So today, I want to walk through something interesting. Not rich people versus poor people, but two people with the same income, living two completely different financial lives because of their daily habits. And once you start noticing these patterns, you can't really unsee them. Let's start with something simple. Awareness. Because the first difference between someone who slowly builds wealth and someone who constantly struggles is actually pretty boring. One of them pays attention. The other sort of hopes things work out. Now imagine two people who both earn $4,000 a month after taxes. Person A checks their bank account maybe once a week. They have a rough sense of where their money goes. Rent, groceries, bills, nothing too complicated. Person B, they check their balance every few days. Not obsessively, not in a stressful way, just awareness. They know roughly how much they spent on food this week. They notice when subscriptions start stacking up. They see patterns. And here's the strange thing. That awareness alone starts changing behavior, because when you're aware of something, you naturally adjust. You might skip an impulse purchase. You might cook at home one extra night. Not because you're trying to be perfect, but because you're paying attention. And over time, those tiny adjustments quietly shift your entire financial trajectory. There's another subtle difference between people who build wealth and people who stay stuck. One group regularly thinks about their future self. The other mostly focuses on today. And to be fair, this is human nature. Right now feels real. Your future self, 10 years from now, is kind of abstract. But wealthy habits often come from a simple daily question. Will future me be glad I did this? For example, let's say both people get paid on Friday. Person A celebrates a little. Dinner out, maybe some online shopping. Nothing crazy, but a few small splurges. Person B does something first. They move a portion of their paycheck into savings or investments, automatically. Before anything else happens, it's not a huge amount, maybe 10%, maybe even 5%, but it happens every single paycheck. And honestly, it's kind of boring. There's no excitement. But over 5 years, that boring habit quietly builds something powerful. Here's a habit that silently keeps people broke. Lifestyle drift. You know how this works. You get a raise. Suddenly your lifestyle expands just enough to absorb it. Better takeout, nicer apartment, maybe a slightly newer car. Nothing outrageous, just upgrades. And before long, your expenses rise almost exactly as fast as your income. So even though you technically make more money than before, you feel exactly the same financially. Sometimes even worse. Now compare that to someone who does something different with raises. Instead of upgrading everything immediately, They lock in part of the raise as savings. If they get a $500 monthly raise, maybe they increase their savings by $300 and enjoy the other $200. They still improve their life, but they also quietly strengthen their financial future. And over time, that one habit creates a gap that gets bigger every single year. Here's a strange psychological trick wealthy people use without realizing it. They add friction to bad spending and remove friction from good habits. Let me explain. Person A has their credit card saved in every shopping app. One click, purchase complete. It's easy, almost too easy. Person B, they remove saved cards from most apps. Now, if they want to buy something, they have to stand up, grab their wallet, type in the numbers. That tiny inconvenience does something interesting. It creates a pause, and that pause often kills impulse purchases. Meanwhile, they make saving effortless, automatic transfers, automatic investing. Good habits happen without effort. Bad habits require effort, and this tiny design change can completely reshape someone's financial life. Another daily difference? Curiosity. People who build wealth tend to spend small amounts of time learning about money, not hours, sometimes just 10 minutes here and there. A podcast while driving, a short article about investing, a video explaining compound interest. At first, it feels insignificant, but over time, that knowledge compounds. You start understanding how credit works, how investing works, how taxes work, and suddenly financial decisions become clearer. Meanwhile, someone who avoids financial learning stays in the dark. They rely on guesswork, and guesswork with money is risky. Now let's talk about something a little uncomfortable. Emotional spending. Because honestly, almost everyone does this sometimes. Bad day at work, order food, feeling bored, scroll shopping apps, feeling stressed, buy something small to feel better, and in the moment, it works. For like 10 minutes. But people who slowly build wealth tend to notice this pattern and interrupt it. Instead of spending to change their mood, they build other habits. Going for a walk, calling a friend, watching something relaxing, small replacements. And this matters because emotional spending is one of the biggest invisible drains on people's finances. Conclusion. So when people talk about wealth, they often imagine dramatic differences, huge salaries, big investments, lucky opportunities. But honestly, the real difference is usually quieter than that. It's the person who checks their finances regularly, the person who saves before they spend, the person who lets raises strengthen their future instead of inflating their lifestyle, the person who makes good habits automatic and bad habits slightly inconvenient. None of these actions feel life-changing in the moment. They're small, almost boring, but stacked together, day after day, year after year. They slowly push two identical incomes in completely different directions. And here's the encouraging part. These habits aren't reserved for rich people. They're available to anyone. You don't need a higher salary to start paying attention to your spending. You don't need a financial degree to move 5% of your paycheck into savings. You don't need perfect discipline to design systems that make good decisions easier. You just need awareness. Because once you start noticing these patterns in your own life, something interesting happens. You begin making slightly different choices. Not perfect ones, just better ones. And over time, those small daily habits quietly turn into something powerful. Something that future you will look back on and think, I'm really glad I started doing that.